Woo! Wow, they are sleepy, Corey. I'm worried about them. Good morning. Oh, see, now and then you're like, watch this. Good morning, everyone. As Corey said, I'll continue our series, Beauty from Ashes, looking through the book of Isaiah. And this book is gigantic. So it's, how many of you have read it all the way through at least once in this time? Point proven. Okay, so you should. I would recommend you read it through in this time that we're doing it, because you'll get to see some of how the larger movements of the book work. And we're still in kind of the tough section, just to warn you right now. We're in the tough section of Isaiah, which is 1 through 39 is about judgment and all the things that are going wrong, with little blips that point forward from 40 on toward how God will redeem all things and make all things new again. And some of you haven't been with us. Let me just review a couple of things we've talked about. This book is so interesting because it's written 700 years before Jesus, and yet it refers to Jesus prophetically over and over and over again. So much so that it's often called the fifth gospel, because it points towards Jesus, how he will be born, what his ministry is like, how he'll die, and how God will remake the earth after his death and his resurrection. So it's a really interesting book in that, you know, for those that maybe struggle with belief or struggle to believe that maybe this faith that we have is true or real, it's one of those books that can confirm your faith. But it also describes to us sort of the patterns and the means by which God grows up our life, makes us thicker in our life with God. Do you ever feel thin in your life with God? It's one person. The rest of you are like, no, I just dance with angels all day, every day. No, I mean, we often feel thin in our life with God, don't we? And we feel as though maybe things don't always click together the way we would want to. And Isaiah offers some reasons for that, and then some solutions in how God wants to interact with his people. So we've been working with the Bible Project, which we love very much. And so I'm going to show you just a little snip from the Bible Project video that'll look at the text that we're in today. So why don't we take a quick peek at that.
Chapters 1 through 12 with a pretty good understanding of Isaiah's message of judgment and hope. But when will this all happen? Isaiah saw another empire arising after Assyria, and that's Babylon, who would also attack Jerusalem and actually succeed in destroying it. And that brings us into the next sections of the book. So first, we have a large collection of poems that explore God's judgment and hope for the nations. We learn, first of all, of the fall of Babylon and Israel's neighbors. Isaiah could see that Assyria's world power would one day be replaced by the empire of Babylon, a nation even more destructive and arrogant. Babylon's kings claimed that they were higher than all other gods, and so God vows to bring Babylon down. And not only Babylon. Isaiah goes on to list Israel's neighbors, accusing them all of the same kind of pride and injustice, and he predicts their ultimate ruin. But remember, for Isaiah, God's judgment is never the final word for Israel or the nations. And that leads into the next section, with a series of poems that tell a tale of two cities. There's the lofty city that has exalted itself above God and become corrupt and unjust. This city is an archetype of rebellious humanity, and is described with language that's all borrowed from Isaiah's earlier descriptions of Jerusalem, Syria, and Babylon, all put together. This city is destined for ruin, and one day it's going to be replaced by the new Jerusalem, where God reigns as king over a redeemed humanity from all nations, and there's no more death or suffering. These chapters are the climax to this section, and it shows how Isaiah's message pointed far beyond his own day. It was a message for all who are waiting for God to bring his justice on violent, oppressive kingdoms and bring his kingdom of justice and peace and heathen life.
Two cities, a city of ashes that falls apart, and a city of beauty and hope and joy and purpose. And how the city of ashes is because God's judgment is upon them, and they fall apart. And out of this fallen apart place, God pulls from that very city and makes a brand new city, one that's redeemed and made new and put together. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to try and do today. I have a goal today. My goal is this, and this is very hard to do, so we'll see if I can pull it off. Are you ready? The goal is to persuade you that you actually want God's judgment to come to the earth. The second goal is that you actually want God's judgment to come to you in your life. And the third is that you don't need to be afraid of that judgment and that you should invite God's judgment in your life. Think I can do it? Two of you are like, yeah, maybe. Because if I just said to you, I just walked up you on the street, like, would you like to be judged today? I think most of you would say, no, I'd prefer not to be judged. I'd prefer you don't do that. Don't judge me. You can't judge me. Anybody ever say anything like that? If you haven't said it, you've thought it, right? Do you have teenagers? Okay. If you do, it comes up. Well, let's look at the difficult passage. Let's look at the difficult passage. Okay, you were a teenager. Okay. Isaiah 24. Listen to how intense this is. This is grim news. See, the Lord is going to lay waste the earth and devastate it. He will ruin its face, scatter its inhabitants. It will be the same for the priest as for the people, for the master as for his servant, for the mistress as for her servant, for the seller as for the buyer, for the borrower as for the lender, for the debtor as for the creditor. The earth will be completely laid waste and totally plundered. The Lord has spoken his word. Isaiah is saying things have gone so bad that the whole earth, not just the city is where he starts, is coming apart. It's falling apart. Corruption will hit every single person. Man, woman, child, priest, business owner. What's important to notice in the text is that this mess affects everybody. And in this way, again, I think the Bible is really helpful because it shows us really clearly that though we think certain people are exempt, eventually the mess of this world touches every person's life. No matter what, no matter who you think you are, no matter how you try to defend yourself from everything around you, no matter how much wealth you have, no matter how much power you have, mess and brokenness infects the whole world. And this word judgment is an important word to understand. We use it in a certain way, a certain vernacular in English, and we tend to conflate it with another word that's also in the Bible that are separate words and they're separate on purpose. Judgment is different than wrath. Wrath is the way that things happen because God does things. Judgment is a different word. In the Hebrew, it's mishpat, which means something very different. It's similar to the word that's used to describe the judges of the Old Testament. And what it means really is God assessing the way things are and then repairing them like the way a mechanic repairs a car. Now, that's a very different way of understanding, isn't it? Judgment means to assess a thing and then to repair it. Now, often in order to repair it, it means you have to take it apart. That it's falling apart, and so you have to take it apart further in order to repair it. I mean, has anyone here repaired a car or an engine? Who here can repair a car engine? Anyone here? Yeah, me neither. How many of you would attempt to repair an engine? You would? You would. You would repair your own car engine. I wouldn't, because you know what it would mean? I wouldn't have a car. I have no idea how to do these things. I have no mechanical sensibilities whatsoever. I have none, zero. I studied philosophy. So I can ask questions like, what is a car? But when, but when an engineer or a mechanic looks at a car, they're like, oh no, this is what a car is. It's these different parts. They go together in this way. I'm like, yeah, but what does that mean? That's my contribution to the conversation. You do not want me touching really anything you own to try to repair it. Anything at all. I just don't know. I don't know how anything really works. And so I wouldn't take it apart. But what I find amazing as I watch mechanically minded people is the thing that's broken, and here's where it gets clear, it has to be taken apart further in order for it to be repaired. See, so much of what the scriptures talk about when they talk about judgment and God's way of interacting in the world is things are coming apart in such a way that they have to be taken apart further for God to repair them. In order for those things to be clearly shown for what they are. When you look at an engine, there's like one little part all the way on the inside that might be messed up. And it requires taking the whole thing apart to get to that one part, to deal with that one part, in order for it all to be put back together. Isaiah 26 says it like this, and this would help make sense of it. When your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness. See, when God assesses the way things really are, if we're honest, it isn't often pleasant. It doesn't feel good because it's God looking at the way things are coming apart and reflecting reality. This is why things are breaking. This is why the world is not as it should be. You need to hear this clearly in order for us to restore things. In order for us to see things be better, we have to tell the truth about where things are broken. So let's look into the details of how God's judgments come to the earth, the things that he sees that aren't right. This is the city of ashes. Isaiah 24. The ruined city lies desolate. The entrance to every house is barred. In the streets they cry out for wine. All joy turns to gloom. All joyful sounds are banished from the earth. The city is left in ruins. Its gate is battered to pieces. There's some interesting things to notice in this passage and in the series of judgments that are in this section. The same word keeps getting used for like desolate, like that word there in verse 10, which is drawn from Genesis chapter 1 in the way that Genesis describes that the earth is formless and void before it's put to order when God begins to create things. Does this make sense? Meaning God creates order, and when God's presence, when God's wisdom, when God's strength is not present, the world devolves into this mess. It becomes formless, without order. It starts to dissipate and fly apart. Scientists say this, that the world is falling apart if it's not kept in order. Entropy. I had a roommate that was more of a slob than me. And I would be like, dude, like there's like chicken on the floor. And he would say, entropy. It's a force of the universe, Jay. And I would say, we need to fight this force to bring order to our home. Entropy, and it's true, by the way. Things just do fly apart over time. They fall apart over time unless you and your little limited abilities can keep it together. Well, that's what God is saying. The world is coming apart if we aren't working with God to keep it in order. And so these texts describe what disorder looks like, how chaos proceeds easily without God's leadership. The first thing you see is that the city's unsafe. The entrance to every house is barred. Some of you probably have grandparents or know people that say there used to be a day they wouldn't lock their doors. You ever heard that? There's some of you in this room that don't lock your doors. You do that right until the time you wish you locked your door. And there are places in the world, and we can hopefully imagine a world where we wouldn't have to lock our doors. But the falling apart of the world means we don't know how to trust one another. There's disorder. There's danger. We have to protect everything that's ours because we can't trust anyone. I love how direct it is. Describes in verse 11 a party that's gone wrong. You see this mob that's walking around. They've had too much to drink, and they're kind of coming out of control. It's like they started the party doing karaoke and laughing, and then they go out on the streets, and now, this is what we generally call Vegas. And they're now on the streets where you can just carry alcohol openly, and they're drinking as they're coming down the street, and this mob now is moved. It's changed from people having fun to now they're looking to get in trouble. If not Vegas, a college campus. But it's starting to move. They're yelling. They're looking to drink more and to get in fights they've lost control. That's effectively what's being described. And this mob, though you might think they're having fun, they might even appear like they're having fun. The way that Isaiah says it says they're actually joyless. There's a flatness to it. There's a desperation. There's a numbing about it. I'm sure you know people like this. I can't wait to get to the weekend. Why? So I can just get hammered. Why? So I can just numb out. I don't want to live. I'm trying to find small versions of death, effectively, where I'm flat, I'm joyless, but at least I'll be relaxed. At least I won't feel this pain. And I can get together with other people and we'll do it together. It'll make us feel like we're doing something together, but really all we're doing is collectively numbing ourselves. The reason it's important to take a moment to look at these things is because, I don't know about you, but this seems to describe the world as I know it. This isn't like some faraway place. These are the ways that people devolve. They start to come apart in their life. There's chaos, there's disorder. There's a sense that life is out of control, that my family's out of control, my friendships seem out of control, my house feels out of control. So what do? You just try to flatten out and survive it. Protect yourself. Build the walls a little thicker. So as Isaiah describes this world that's come out of control, then he flips and says, imagine a world where then God's judgments are true and right and change the way people behave. That God's favor and his order is in a place. And this is Isaiah 25. We read a part of it, but let me read the whole. He says, on this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines. It's important to note that having a great time with God doesn't mean you don't have any joy. Quite the opposite. It seems as though the scriptures make a case over and over that it's a real joy, not a flat, numbing, thin one. There's smoked meats. Praise the Lord. I added smoked. It says best, but I assume that's smoked. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud. Listen to this. The shroud that enfolds all peoples. Some of your translations might say the chains. The chains that bind them. The sheet that covers all nations. Here it is. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. And in that day, they will say, surely this is our God. We trusted in him. He has saved us. This is the Lord. We trusted in him. Let us rejoice and be glad in his salvation. The hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain. A city of celebration, a city where gloom is broken, where death is no more. How does this come? The judgments of God are pronounced and seen as right and true. People are yielded to this God and believe that what he has to say, that they let him be the mechanic of their life and of this place. And though it might mean that he has to take things apart a little bit in order to put them together, it's in this process that they're set to right. They're joining the way that God always intended the world to be. I hope by now I've persuaded you of the first thing I said, that you do want God's judgments to come to the world. Don't you want God to come and show us what exactly isn't working? To describe why our cities don't work, why our economies don't work, why we have so many problems in the way something like healthcare or government works. Well, don't you want God to come and say, let's set this to right? Let's make it so that people don't just oppress one another. You want, I want, we should want the God who designed the world and knows how to order it to set it to right. And more than that, and this is where it gets trickier, you should want God's judgments to come to you. The things I described earlier, some of you were like, that's definitely me. It feels like my family's out of control. It feels like my marriage is disordered. It feels like my money is out of control. It feels like I don't know how to do this thing and this part of my friendships, or there's these, my career path feels like it doesn't make any sense to me. Do you want God to come and rightly order your life? It feels strange to say it, doesn't it? But to say, like, I need God to come and make judgments of my life. To, like, survey the whole of my life and tell me what works and what doesn't work and how my life should work. Now, as I say that right now, you're like, I don't know, that wouldn't be very comfortable. And it wouldn't be. It would mean he might have to detangle a whole series of things in your life. Has anyone ever been to a financial advisor? It's an awkward experience because you bring all your stuff. I don't know, maybe you're better at this than me. There's this sense in my mind always that I'm probably going to go to jail. Like, I'm going to bring you this. I'm probably going to go to jail. Like, I'm sure we've done something wrong, horribly wrong. And you're going to look at me and be like, what is this? And I'll be like, I know. I knew it the whole time. I never knew what I was doing. I mean, it's an awkward experience because you're talking to an expert. You're talking to somebody that actually knows how things are supposed to be. If it isn't money for you, it might be your marriage. The guts it takes to sit in front of someone and say, there's these patterns in our marriage we don't know what to do with. The defensiveness that you start to feel. The awkward experience of, like, someone looking at you and saying, so, like, why do you do this and why don't you do that? Or how do you think this started? How did this pattern begin? That is not a pleasant experience generally. You feel defensive, you feel awkward, you feel uncomfortable. That's just to let someone in to begin to evaluate your life. How about, have you been to a physical trainer or a dietitian? A nutritionist? Some of you right now are like, no. Why not? Do you want to be healthier? Do you want your life to work better? And if you're honest, the real answer is not really. Not enough for me to actually do that. I don't actually want to be that much better. I'm probably okay, unless you tell me I'm going to die. It's amazing to watch how people can get healthy when they realize they're going to die. But before that, not so much. Well, in the same way, all of these people represent wisdom, but God himself is more wise than all of those people could put together. Don't you want the wisdom of God, the clarity of God in your life? And the reason you don't is because you're afraid. But here's what's amazing about what the scriptures teach us happens in Jesus. God came for us in the person of Jesus Christ. Where you fall short in every single way, he hit the mark perfectly. Good in every way, loving in every way, and he took that sacrifice upon himself. He suffered the shame that you and I deserve. He suffered and died. He was crucified on your behalf. Every place that you're afraid and ashamed, he paid for it. He took that on himself. That's how much God loves you. And all that God asks for is that you would just receive that gift that's offered in Jesus and then walk in his ways. That means you never have to be afraid of being ashamed in front of God, ever. You are forgiven. He loves you. When he looks at you, he sees his son Jesus, and then he's able to have some honest conversations like, we do need to talk about the chicken wings. But it's because I love you. It's because there's some space between who you are now and who I want to make you into. There is some ways I want to bring order to your life, but it's no longer about your value. It's no longer about whether he loves you or not. But there might be some of you in this room that you've not said yes to that gift that's found in Jesus. You thought maybe what it meant to become Jesus, somehow you had to be perfect. No. The whole message of coming to know Jesus is you're not perfect, and that's why you receive the gift that's offered in Jesus Christ. Every person in this room that says they're a follower of Jesus, it isn't because they're great. It's because they know they're not great. And they've said yes to Jesus, and so they've started to follow him as a means of God putting their life back in order and receiving the love and the grace that's offered in Jesus Christ. So for some of you today, that's where you begin. For others of us, if you've received Jesus Christ, then you never have to be afraid of judgment. Because all the judgments of God come to help you. Help you in your marriage. Help you in your finances. Help you in how you order your desires. You can invite the judgment of God into your life because you know you're loved, because you know there's grace, so that he can, here it is, set you free. Just because you know Jesus doesn't mean you don't tangle yourself up. Just because you know Jesus doesn't mean that you don't deal with different kinds of pain and shame and fear and doubt and worry in the world. You invite the gaze of God upon your life so that with wisdom, he can help you work out how your life works. You never have to be afraid again, and you invite that. Did I win? Did I get all three done? Okay, just for you. Okay, great. You and I had a great day.